Are you building a computer and see this expensive motherboard with RGB on the I/O and all black and absolutely matches your case and everything? Well, you don't really need all that. So we're going to show you why you do not need an expensive motherboard. But first, our intro. So now to get into why you do not need an expensive motherboard. Here we have the ASUS ROG Strix X570F, which has RGB in the I/O. As you click into the image, we're going to display it on the screen. On the image, what you're going to look for in a motherboard is a VRM, is it the right socket, RAM, M.2 if you need an M.2. If you're not even going to use M.2, don't get a motherboard with M.2. But from this motherboard, the VRM, which controls the CPU voltage. So if you are planning to overclock, look for a motherboard with like very big VRM. And then I was going to look for PCIe 4.0. If you find a cheap motherboard with PCIe 4.0, it's good because you're really only going to need one. Because why would you have two GPUs unless you're not on the budget? Because they're really expensive. Also the chipset. If the chipset has a heatsink on it, as you see from the Z9, we were going to like circle on the screen like here, that thing. If it has a cooler for the chipset, that means it's good because the chipset gets warm, which means it's good. Now let's take a look at the one that we recommend for budget and what you should get instead of getting one that's a bunch of RGB and really unnecessary stuff, which is the MSI B450M, which you should get. It's a mini ITX, which cases are kind of expensive, the mini ITX. But you can't fit them in the ATX case. So on the B450M, so the VRM, which is made up of rectangle things and square things. I don't know what they're called. But if you're not planning to overclock, don't look for very big VRMs because you're not going to need them that much because they're made for overclocking. And it has a passive cooling heatsink for the chipset, and has PCIe 4.0. We can't find it. It should, but you want to look for one with PCIe 4.0. That's because they're downward compatible. Well, and it only costs $45 in UK, which have insanely cheap stuff. And back to the motherboard. What's going to look for? If it has an I/O shield, it doesn't matter that much. You can just. It doesn't matter if it's a built-in I/O shield or you have to clamp it on separately. It looks nice though. I have one. It looks nice. Customizable RGB. The main reason why I got it, I didn't care about it cost me €120. I couldn't get an €80 one. We're not going to talk about that. We are going to upload a video about a computer build, like not soon, but like a couple of weeks. What else to look out? Your case. If you have a case with a USB, some cases require USB Type 3.0, USB Type 3.0 or 2.0, something like that. You're gonna look for headers if it has the right headers. Which, looking on the motherboard, this can only fit 4 SATA. You're not gonna need 4 SATA ports unless you have SATA SD for booting and massive hard drive for random stuff. And it has no M.2. Oh, it does have an M.2. It has an M.2 heatsink. You're not really gonna need an M.2 heatsink unless you're like transferring loads of files constantly. Like if you're using it for gaming, don't look for a motherboard with M.2 heatsink and all that fancy stuff. Because you can save a lot of money by getting a good cheap motherboard and a good cheap case, and don't waste money on the pointless stuff. You get a good GPU and good CPU and RAM, and none of the else stuff matter. If you are planning to use 4/6 of RAM, go for 4/6. But normally people get 2/6 of RAM because it's €100. You don't really need more than 32 gigabytes of RAM. You can get sticks of like 32 each, can't you? Yeah, 32 each. You're not gonna really need it. You can run dual channel, right? Do 2 sticks motherboards. Yeah, you can run dual channel. You're not gonna need 4/6 of RAM, unless you're like editing stuff and you really need that RAM. You can just spend extra like €50-ish, 70, and extra like double the capacity of the 32. It's like nearly €200. It's the same price and stuff. So if you see a motherboard that looks cool and has all the features you need and only has 2 RAM sticks, get it, because you're not going to need 4. It's going to cost an extra like 100 to 120 euro when you can spend 70 and get the exact same capacity and speed. Also the fan headers, they're important. Some motherboards, the standard has to be an intake and outtake, so every motherboard has to have at least 2 fan headers. But if you want 3, just get a 5 euro like fan hub. You don't need to get the Corsair Commander Pro, cost 60 euro. They're really expensive. I mean, you can just get like where you plug it into one header and it splits off into 6 or 5. Max you can get like 6. So like there's no point getting a motherboard that you have 4 fans. You need 4 fans. I'm going the only motherboard you can see. Just don't waste your money on that kind of stuff when you can get a better GPU. Because GPU is all that matters. And CPU. CPU is important. Do not bend the pins. The pins are so scary. They're terrifying. PC build video. Explain. It's subscribe. And when it's uploaded, you'll be able to see it, and they look terrifying. We put it in flat, but it was like that, and it was like, ugh. And yeah, but the RAM crunches whenever you put it in, and it sounds nice. And back to motherboards. Compatibility. That's it. If your motherboard needs to support 3rd gen Ryzen, because Windows 11 doesn't support 2nd gen or 1st gen Ryzens, which is like bad. So you're gonna want to save money by getting a motherboard that is 3rd gen Ryzen compatible. Otherwise, when Windows 10 expires and it's not supported anymore, you have to get a new motherboard and stuff because you won't be able to boot up Windows. Or you can get Linux, which is another operating system. But Windows is way easier because Linux is just code. You have to type manual code to open up stuff, and it's not a lot of people know how to do. I don't know how to do that. What else? If you do have a Wi-Fi, you can use Ethernet is way faster. But if you are getting a Wi-Fi card, there's this like tiny rectangle thing on this pointing out on the screen in a massive circle. You don't really need 2 beside each other, but like it's like if you're Ethernet, don't get a Wi-Fi card unless you're planning to use Bluetooth, or can you get a dongle or a plug-in? They're also a thing, and that pretty much says it for the cheap one. Now to go to expensive stuff that you do not need. Now, if you are on a budget and you do not want to waste money on any of these features, because if you're on a budget, you're not gonna like get a 3090 or a Ryzen 7 or high-end stuff if you're on a budget. So looking at the ASUS ROG Strix X570F, we're gonna look at the stuff that is good about it. So let's go to the picture about the motherboard. The VRMs have this, I think it's a heatsink above it. I think it's a heatsink above. I think it's just to hide it. But it has chunky VRMs, which means it's really good for overclocking. It does support an AIO, but you gotta watch out for that. If you are planning to get AIO, make sure there's a header on the motherboard that says AIO pump and AIO fan. No, AIO pump. That's it. It's only one. Make sure it says that. And make sure you have extra fan headers because they do require fans. And it's pretty good. This comes with 4 RAM slots and has a active chipset heatsink, which means it's constantly on because it's active, and a water pump. This supports don't get a motherboard because it supports water cooling, like hardline water cooling. If you're on a budget, you're never going to hardline water cooling. That costs really expensive. Also M.2s. The last motherboard we saw only had like 1 M.2. You only really going to need 1. But if you are editing and you are doing that massive workings on it, you are going to need 2 M.2s. Maybe I have 1 for booting and 1 for just like transferring files, like a 980 Evo Pro Plus. I think that's the name of it. You are going to need a heatsink. So put the M.2 over the heatsink. Remember to put on the heatsink after. Some people forget. It also has a PCIe 4.0. It has 2 of them. And that's all that. No, it has. Can you fit a graphics card on the bottom one? I don't. It was very confusing. Some people, there's some companies put them at the very bottom, but you're never gonna fit anything. You might put like something that's PCIe there. So you can, what's it called? what's that thing called? You can like combine two graphics cards together, like quadros, for the cable. What else? This does have an I/O. On the I/O, it has a RGB. It looks cool, but again, it's not really worth it if you're on a budget. Don't spend like your entire budget on a motherboard. I did not do that. PC build video. I keep on saying that. See, you're not really gonna need. If you're not really gonna need, you can save a lot of money on motherboard. If your motherboard like says it comes with multiple fan headers, don't get it because it's multiple fan headers. Just get a fan splitter thing. It'll save you a lot of money. It costs like €6. We should say an Amazon affiliate and just have the links to all the stuff we say. Money's nice. So don't waste your money on an expensive motherboard. Also, what's really annoying, we did this in PC build video. The top corner near the I/O, there's a screw and we could not get that in. It was so annoying. So like it's like against the case, but we take out the fan, and yeah, but it's very hard to put in all the screws because we did not have a magnetic screwdriver, which is annoying. That's it. Don't get one. Don't get an expensive motherboard because it looks nice. Subscribe.